Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers and colleagues, my name is Jean d'Aragon, Senior Sustainable Development Expert at the UN Office for Sustainable Development, also referred to as UNOSD in Incheon, Republic of Korea. I would like to welcome and thank you all for joining this third session of the Sustainable Development Transformation Forum taking place between the 28th of February to the 4th of March, 2022. The forum is organized by UNOSD, which is part of UN DESA Division for Sustainable Development Goals, in collaboration with our partner, the Asia-Europe Foundation, known as ASEF. As mentioned in the previous sessions, the general objective of this forum is closely linked to the high-level political forum, which will take place in New York next July. It aims to contribute to a better understanding of successes, challenges, lessons learned, and good practices related to the implementation of SDG 4 on quality education, 5 on gender equality, 14 on life below water, 15 life on land, and 17 on partnership for the goals. It also aims to look at some of the impacts that the COVID-19 pandemic is having on these selected SDGs, as well as across all the SDGs, in a forward-looking mode to identify potential responses and solutions that can also advance the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Due to COVID-19, this year again, like last year, the Sustainable Development Transformation Forum is taking place online. Unlike previous years, where it brought together about 100 participants from around the world for over 3 to 4 days in Incheon City in South Korea to share their knowledge and experiences on sustainable development issues. We hope to go back to this in-person or offline format of all our capacity building activities, including the next Sustainable Development Transformation Forum as soon as possible. Meanwhile, we believe and hope that the series of the 2.5-hour online sessions taking place over 4 days will fulfill the objectives and goals we set for the forum. I should mention here that we also understand that the common frustration sometimes about the online meetings, which we also share somehow. But we tried this time to ease the limitation of this format and make the forum as interactive as possible, introducing different tools that will be explained a bit later on. The two first sessions held on Monday and Tuesday, yesterday, were dedicated to SDG 4 on quality education and SDG 5 on gender equality, respectively, in the context of the Building Back Better for COVID-19 pandemic and fostering the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. As indicated in the program of the forum, this session today, we will explore the SDG 14 on life below water, and particularly how the oceans can help us fight against and recover from COVID-19 and deliver the SDGs. We'll have 6 presentations in the session. We have, first we'll have a video from the Director General of the International Cooperation Policy Bureau of the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries in the Republic of Korea. The second presentation has the same title of the session, so how the ocean can help us fight against and recover from COVID-19 and deliver the SDGs. From the point of view of the small island developing states through the UN DESA SIDS unit. Same with the third presentation, we have also the same title, which is the theme of our session, from a member of the National Assembly of the Republic of the Seychelles. We'll have also the Northwest Pacific Action Plan and the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations Environment Program. Next one will be SDG 14, People on Change Journeys for Implementation, from a group of scientists working directly with the fishermen and fisherwomen populations in developing countries. The last presentation, a deep dive into the world of plastics and its effect on SDG 14 by an NGO working hard in trying to convince companies to change their systemic approach to the use of plastics. I'm personally looking forward to watching and listening to this session with very interesting panel of expert practitioners and doers working on achieving SDG 14 in their areas of expertise. Before we start, I need to remind the speakers and presenters to try to keep their speech and presentation within the time allotted, given the tight schedule that we have in this session, to leave time for all the 6 presentations and discussion. I should also add that the more details about the presenters will be provided by the moderators of the session. Talking about the moderators, now I would like to introduce the 2 moderators of this session. So alongside Mr. Darren Swanson, who is the UN OSD consultant, the session will be co-moderated by Ms. Grażyna Puławska, who is acting director of the Sustainable Development and Public Health Department at the Asia Europe Foundations, our longtime partner in the Sustainable Development Transformation Forum. I will now leave the floor to Ms. Grażyna Puławska. Gina, please come in. The floor is yours.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Jean, for the introduction. However, I think the session starts with Darren today. Am I correct on this?
Yeah, I'll take over right now. Thank you.
I'm sorry, my note was saying that we start the other way around. Okay, please, Darren.
And Gina, our
Swanson, go ahead.
colleagues online, Gina will join us here shortly with moderation duties, and you'll see both of our faces throughout the event. Thank you very much, John, and welcome colleagues today to this session. We've enjoyed 2 successful sessions over the past few days now of hearing from very insightful speakers. And we've had some good interaction over the last couple of days. And that's what this forum today will be about as well. We are going to interact in a number of ways. So let's maybe talk a bit about how we're going to do that. We are going to have a series of, little trivia questions, warm-up trivia questions to test our knowledge on sustainable development. And we're also going to have a series of poll questions following our speakers to delve into some of the issues from different directions. And that's a chance to hear from you. And we'll be using an app called Slido, and we will show you how to access that app shortly. We, of course, will have question and answer periods with our speakers. So we encourage you, as the speakers are delivering their talks, if you have questions that come to mind, please do post them in the chat space for everyone to see. And we will get a chance to address 1 or 2 questions in between each talk. We will also have a discussion page today dedicated to the forum as an opportunity for you to provide examples of initiatives that relate to SDG 14, and we'll describe that in a little bit as well. But first off, let's take a look at that discussion page. It is going to be using the Padlet page, and in the chat space, the link to the discussion page and the poster page is provided. And you just need to click on that link, and that will take you to the page. It'll open up in a separate browser window, so you'll have to navigate that multitasking. But this page allows you to post and comment on information. And we have 4 questions that we would like you to share with us today, examples of. So, good practices for protecting life below water. We'd like to hear about your initiatives or policies or programs or projects that have been successfully working toward achieving SDG 14. We also want to hear about implementation challenges and lessons learned that you've experienced over the years. That's a really important part of the forum. Thirdly, we'd like to hear how COVID has impacted your initiatives over the last few years? And finally, we'd like to hear your input about how society could build back better to protect life below water. So you can share on these 4 areas, and you can also post comments on other postings that you see. So we encourage you throughout the session today and thereafter to view this content and to add to this content, and we'll try to visit here a little bit during the sessions. This is a moderated page, so your postings may be delayed by a few minutes as the content is moderated, just to ensure that all appropriate content is shared on the site. Now, let's go to the polling aspect. So we're using the app Slido, and it can be accessed either by your phone, by holding your camera up to the screen, and we'll show you a barcode momentarily. Or you could just open up another browser window and go to slido.com and input the access code there, which is SDTF 2022. I think we'll have to correct the access code in the chat space. I see it should be 2022. Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much. And so let's do a bit of a warm up. So this is a chance to try out and test out the polling function. If you have your camera handy right now, which I do on my phone, I just open up my camera and I hold it up to the barcode on the screen, and a little yellow button shows up. I press that and it takes me directly to the poll. Or you can add the code to the website, slido.com, and you can access the poll. And I see that participants are now starting to get on to the site. And we have a question here for you. General question about life below water. We want to know, globally, how many people rely on oceans for their livelihoods? And we have participants now are slowly getting going. They're thinking about what the statistic is. There's a range of possible answers there. And this will nicely set the context, because the oceans, as the Sustainable Development Goals progress website for the United Nations does discuss, that the oceans and seas and marine resources are under constant threat from pollution, warming, acidification, and that's disrupting marine ecosystems and the communities they support. So these challenges have long-term repercussions that require the world to urgently scale up the protection of marine environments, investment in ocean science, support for small-scale fishery communities, and the sustainable management of the oceans. And we can see from the poll that there's good reason for that, because in fact, the answer is globally, there are 3 billion people that rely on our oceans for livelihoods, which is an incredible number. That means a good portion of the global population is linked directly to the oceans for their livelihoods. So I want to thank participants very much for accessing the poll. We'll be using this throughout the session. The poll will automatically advance on your device, so you won't need to rescan the barcode each time or enter the code. It'll just should automatically appear on your device. But if you do lose your page, you can always rescan or re-input the code. All right, thank you very much. If you have any questions or having a bit of trouble with the technology, you can send a question to the chat space, and our tech team will try to address them for you. All right, without further ado, we have a full slate of speakers, as Jean noted, and we continue the excellent discussion from the last few days here, focused on now life below water. And I'm going to introduce our speakers as they present. But as John noted, we have 6 excellent speakers here today, and we'll have a chance to interact with each speaker through question and answers and the poll questions that they have lined up for us. So without further ado, I'll introduce our first video address. Our first video address today is from Mr. Kim Hyun-tae, and he is the Director General for International Cooperation Policy Bureau of the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. He has served in the ministry for many years, working as the Director General for Marine Affairs and Safety Policy Bureau and Director of the International Cooperation Division. And Mr. Kim holds an MA in Public Administration from Exeter University in the UK. And now I turn the floor over to our UNOSD team to run the video.
Good afternoon. I'm Kim Hyun-tae, Director General for International Cooperation Policy Bureau of Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries. Distinguished guests from home and abroad, it is my pleasure to join 2022 Sustainable Development Transformation Forum. I would like to convey my deepest gratitude for organizing such an insightful forum. The agenda of sustainable development has indeed become the top priority for humanity at this point of time. 7 years ago today, the United Nations agreed upon the SDGs. Such goals in pursuit of sustainable development were declared across the globe under the leadership of the United Nations to realize their values by 2030. Yet as of today, the unprecedented outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has hindered our steps forward with the SDGs. Experts say that COVID-19 has brought global challenges such as increased poverty, inequality, and supply chain problems more complicated. On the other hand, our daily lives have been turning into contactless style as well as being smart and digitalized. While the COVID-19 virus is now prevalent to the whole world, other catastrophic disasters such as climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and mortality problems are taking place more frequently in every corner of our society than ever before. Extreme weather events are spotted in different parts of the world. We saw heat waves in the Arctic and heavy snow and extreme cold in Texas last year. According to the statistics, more than 1 million species of animals and plants are endangered globally, and the level of plastic pollution is now 10 times more severe compared to that in the 1980s. Against such a backdrop, the SDGs appears to be far-reaching goal to achieve. However, I firmly believe that such challenges can be sorted out as long as we stay more vigilant on them and work together in unity. And I also believe that oceans and seas can serve as a great milestone for such a transboundary cooperation. Oceans and seas are like air to humans. They are priceless treasures. However, they are so common that we are highly likely to neglect their values both ecologically and economically. The ocean provides about 80% of the living creatures on Earth with their habitats. 95% of ocean is still unexplored, and 89% of global trade by volume is carried by the sea. Also, to more than 3 billion people across the globe, the ocean supplies essential protein as well as provides opportunities for their livelihood. But we need to ask ourselves whether we have taken the ocean for granted for far too long. Thanks to the variety of policies and programs by the public sector and civil societies, more and more people have recognized what the ocean means to the human beings. In particular, it is widely known that the ocean plays a key role in addressing global warming through absorbing greenhouse gas emissions by up to 30%. But unfortunately, the oceans and seas are very ill and may not recover from their serious condition. Therefore, we gather here today to discuss ideas and plans for making a blue recovery or recovery through the ocean, as well as keeping the mechanism for climate repair to run more efficiently. I'm sure that you are well aware that EU, USA, China have announced the blue economy as their new strategies of national growth to achieve the SDGs via the ocean. And the United Nations and the World Bank continue their policy studies on blue economy. On behalf of the Republic of Korea, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries has been carrying out sustainable development policies related to the ocean. For starters, the Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries announced the 2050 carbon neutrality framework and promised to reduce the nation's marine plastic litter to zero level by 2050 at the P4G Seoul Summit last year. Korea joined the International Resolution on Plastic Pollution as a co-sponsor and will expand the scope of its global engagement to new plastic economy global commitment. In addition, Korea is also focusing on promoting blue carbon resources by making the most of tidal floods and creating sea forests. Korea aims to let the marine ecosystem absorb up to 1.3 million tons of greenhouse gas emission as of 2050 by securing more carbon sink resources. Distinguished guests, human beings become more and more dependent on the ocean. Thus, I would say that the ocean holds our future. While here, I kindly call upon your cooperation from each nation, each organization, each civil society, and each individual for a sustainable ocean and for the sustainable earth. Thank you.
Well, we thank Mr. Kim Hyun-tae very much for his video address, and he aptly noted that the ocean holds our future. And he highlighted a number of instances and examples of why that is indeed the case. I think we don't have Mr. Kim Hyun-tae here for direct questions and answers, but I do want to touch on a few areas that he did expand on in his video talk. So on the screen now is a poll question that is based on some information that he did provide in his address, and that was what % of global trade by volume is carried by the sea. And we have 3 options there. And if you remember from his presentation, you might be able to recall what that statistic was. It does build on the opening statistic that we did have in the poll, which was about what was the global population that depends directly on the oceans for livelihoods. And of course, we learned that was 3 billion people. And so Mr. Kim Hyun-tae did aptly note in his presentation that the percentage of global trade that is carried and does occur through the oceans is, in fact, as many people have started to see already, is in fact 89% of trade volume is carried by the oceans, and that's a substantive number. He also did talk about plastic pollution in his presentation. And if you recall, so another poll question here for you about plastic pollution. So in his address, he did note that plastic pollution is several times more severe now compared to the 1980s. And if you can recall, what was that percent? Was it 6 times? Was it 3 times? Was it 10 times more compared to the 1980s? So while people are getting used to logging into the Slido app, of course, we do have with SDG 14, the goal, we do have a number of targets, of course, that are outlined for the 2030 agenda for the reasons that Mr. Kim Hyun-tae noted about the oceans holding our future. So there are 7 targets for for goal number 14, and along with 3 other implementation targets. Of course, one of those targets being the first one, of course, being to prevent and significantly reduce marine pollution of all kinds. in particular from land-based activities, including marine debris and nutrient pollution. So yes, indeed, we do have, in fact, 10 times more plastic pollution now than compared to the 1980s. And we are going to learn a bit more about that as the presentations proceed here today. So thank you, colleagues, for responding to those poll questions. Without further ado, we do want to move on to our next speaker for today. And today we have Mr. Navoti joining us here. He is the chief of the SDGs unit at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And prior to his current post, Sai served as the senior legal advisor with the International Seabed Authority. He also served as lead negotiator for the G77 plus China in 2013, and he was the lead negotiator for the Alliance of Small Island States in 2012, and as well a counterterrorism officer for the UNODC before that. Sai served Fiji as military officer, government lawyer, and a diplomat. He holds Bachelor's of Arts degree in politics, Bachelor of Law, 2 postgraduate diplomas, and a Master of Science degree. Lots of experience, lots of academic background, and lots to share with us today, Sai. I'll turn the floor over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you kindly. Darren, Mr. Swanson, Mr. Moderator, thank you very much. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a very good morning to you all from New York. I hope that you are all good wherever you are tuning in from, the world, part of the world you are tuning in from. I hope that I'm being heard clearly. First, I would like to acknowledge my colleagues at the United Nations Office on Sustainable Development in Korea, Mr. Park, Jean, and the team. And I want to thank them for extending the invitation to me to be part of this conversation today. I also would like to acknowledge the presence of the speakers and the discussants. It is indeed an honor for me to share this platform with them. Darren, I have a PowerPoint presentation which I would like to share now with our colleagues. Now, given my my current responsibility there, and I would like to limit the breadth and the focus of my presentations, and I will be speaking primarily from a small island developing states perspective this morning. My presentation, will be divided into 3 parts, as you can see on the screen. And I will now go to my first part of my presentation, which is small island developing states, their oceans, and their sustainable development aspirations, priorities, and commitments. Now, there is international consensus that the oceans, the seas, and along with the coastal areas form an essential component of the Earth ecosystem. Healthy oceans, productive and resilient oceans and coasts are critical for poverty eradication, access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, livelihoods, economic development, and essential ecosystem services. For many people in the small island developing states, it also represents an important element of their identity and culture. Paragraph 53 of the Samoa Pathway, which is the Sustainable Development Priorities and Goals agreed internationally for small island developing states, identified sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, coastal tourism, the possible use of seabed resources, and potential sources of renewable energy as among the main building blocks for the sustainable ocean-based economy in small island developing states. Paragraph 58 of the Samoa Pathway, the international community listed 16 action areas to support SIDS conserve, protect, manage, and sustainably use the oceans and seas and their resources. It is interesting to note that paragraph 58.0 contained the commitment by SIDS themselves to conserve by 2020 at least 10% of their coastal and marine areas. These same commitments was repeated by the international community in SDG 14 in target 14.5. The international community also made a specific pledge in SDG target 14.7 that by 2030 increase the economic benefits to seeds and least developed countries from the sustainable use of marine resources, including through sustainable management of fisheries, aquaculture, and tourism. Today, COVID-19 continued to have an impact on oceans and activities. While recovery speeds differ, most small islands and least developed countries are still being particularly affected. There are several studies available carried out by the United Nations systems and organizations and other stakeholders, both at national, sub-regional, and regional level, detailing the impact of COVID-19 on oceans and the ocean-based sectors, including in small island developing states. I will not endeavor to detail these effects. Most are well known to us. However, just take, for instance, in the global fisheries, for instance, this sector was affected through illness, labor shortages, reduced fishing activities, and decreased demand from value chain partners, with direct consequences for fish workers, small-scale fishers, and retailers. The United Nations Secretary General, in his latest report on oceans and the law of the sea, in paragraph 6 of document A/76311, observed, and I quote, "As the global community continues its effort to recover better from COVID-19, progress in realizing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, including Sustainable Development Goal 14, and its 10 targets, some of which expired in 2020, has been significantly curtailed and in some areas halted or even reversed." One of the more important implications and adverse impact of COVID-19 is the fact that at its height, between 2020 and 2021, 4 of the 10 targets of the SDG 14 lapsed. And as you can see on the screen, SDG 14.2, SDG 14.4, 14.5, and 14.6. Despite its adverse impact, COVID-19 has also shown and presented a golden opportunity for developing countries, including small island developing states, to frame policy options to unleash the full potential of their blue economy. As a concept, blue economy is understood to mean the sustainable use of their oceans resources for economic growth, improved livelihood, and jobs for all, while preserving the health of the ocean ecosystem. Blue economy activities include goods and services related to harvesting of marine living resources and their transformation and trade, such as seafood, the use of marine living resources for pharmaceutical products, the extraction and use of marine non-living resources, minerals, energy sources, and freshwater generation, the use of non-exhaustible natural resources for generation of offshore renewable energy. Excuse me. And also the commerce and trade in and around oceans, sectors such as transport, coastal development, tourism, and recreation, to name but just a few. Now, there are naturally different pathways for countries that could be adopted by countries to develop their blue economy. Now, these several ways depends primarily on several factors, including their capacities and unique environmental, social, and cultural conditions, the national priorities and strategies, current and future economic activities, and potential for innovation. However, it is generally found that there are common steps that could be taken by developing countries, including small island developing states, to develop their blue economy. Now, the first of such steps is the accurate valuation of their oceanic capital. Now, this is essential if policymakers, investors, and other development actors are to make good decisions on the allocation of national resources in their economies. Only when policymakers incorporate the full benefits, the full net benefit of ocean resources and services in the blue economy into the decision making and in national accounting, can the sustainability of blue development pathways be ensured. Underpinning these efforts is the need for governments and civil society organizations to partner and to strive to raise awareness of the real value and role of marine and coastal ecosystem and biodiversity in human welfare and planetary health, as well as the role of the marine and coastal livelihood and coastal communities in preserving marine and coastal ecosystem and biodiversity. The second step is the integration of oceanic assets in national and local development strategies. Now, this is a critical first step to ensure the emergence of a shared vision where the country and area-specific priority sectors are identified. Having both a shared short and medium-term roadmap and a longer-term vision for development of blue economy is necessary to enable the consistency of policy making and public and private investments, and consequently, the sustainable development of priority sectors within the blue economy. The third step would be to develop adequate human and institutional capital, both at local, national, and regional levels. Now, this is critical to ensure countries are well equipped to unleash the potential of their blue economy, including through enhanced formal education and vocational training. Providing relevant public and private agents with the right sets of skills and tools for sustainable management of ocean resources, while harnessing the ocean potential to create jobs and income, is essential. Fostering knowledge and technology transfer, including international cooperation on research and development, are also essential for this step. The fourth step would be to ensure policy coherence and the building of partnerships. This is critical in setting the legal and the policy framework and incentive to direct public and private investment towards the blue economy. Beyond intersectorial, government coherence, strategic partnerships for blue economy will involve national and local authorities, civil societies, and academia, and the private sector, including small businesses. Integrating blue economy principles and incentives in regional and global trade agreement can also boost partnerships building at international level. And finally, the development of smart fiscal incentives. Now, these incentives make best use of domestic revenues and existing development finance, including innovative insurance and guarantee schemes, balance finance, debt for environment swap, blue bonds, conservation trust, revolving loan funds, carbon credits, contingency recoverable grants, parametric insurance, risk pooling, crowdsourcing, diaspora financing, and the likes. These are instruments based on public-private partnership, can be used in a successful manner to leverage financing for the blue economy. Employing these 5 steps can, in our respectful submission, help against the fight against the COVID impacts and also enables developing countries, including small island developing states, to deliver on the SDGs. Now, Mr. Moderator, I'll move quickly to part 3 of my presentation, and on seeds and partnerships, where I will briefly highlight an example of a SDG 14 partnership project we are presently implementing at the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And I will later say a few words about our partnership accelerator initiative under the seeds partnership framework. In 2017, DESA and the International Seabed Authority jointly announced and registered at the first United Nations Ocean Conference a voluntary commitment entitled the Abyssal Initiative for Blue Growth. Later on, the government of Norway joined these partnerships through their development body, NORAD. Now, the mandate for this initiative was to fulfill the requirements of the request in paragraph 58A of the Samoa Pathway, and that is to enhance national, legal, and institutional framework for the exploration and sustainable use of living and non-living resources, and also to attain the target 14.7, sorry, that is to increase economic benefit to small island developing states. This initiative targeted 4 Pacific states, namely the Cook Islands, Kiribati, Nauru, and Tonga. These countries are sponsors of entities that have entered into 15 years contractual arrangement with the International Seabed Authority for exploration of deep seabed minerals in the area. The initiative has seen the building of capacity in these 4 countries in areas such as their role and their obligation as a sponsoring states under international law, marine scientific research and access to such research, environmental management and monitoring of exploration activities in the area, and of course, benefit sharing of deep seabed mineral exploitation. The Abyssal Initiative has produced 2 very good guides, which will be launched at the 2nd UN Ocean Conference. The first is a toolkit of the role and responsibility of sponsoring states. And the second is the guideline for negotiation with sponsored entities. These are 2 useful resources for developing countries who may, in the future, wish to explore this aspect of their blue economy. And finally, Darren, the partnerships and seeds. Partnerships are effective instruments for mobilizing human, financial resources, expertise, technology, and knowledge, and can be powerful drivers for change, innovation, and welfare. The 2030 Agenda Partnership Accelerator is a collaborative initiative by DESA and the Partnering Initiative in collaboration with the United Nations Office for Partnership, the UN Global Compact, and the United Nations Development Coordination Office. This initiative aims to significantly help accelerate effective partnerships in support of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Samoa Pathway. Direct partnership training, support, and advisory service are offered to member states and to the United Nations resident coordinators wishing to foster stronger collaboration between stakeholders and the sectors and enhance their capacities in forging new multi-stakeholder partnership and partnership platform. Now for us at the Small Island Developing States Unit, our support is entitled Supporting Partnership Effectiveness in Seeds. Now this initiative aims to support individuals to become trainers on partnership effectiveness in small island developing states. The purpose of the trainers is to ultimately contribute to the replication of genuine, durable partnerships to support in the 3 regions of seeds. We are looking for trainers who have had preferably previous training in the field of development and have experience and solid understanding and passion for multi-stakeholder partnerships. Now, we have started with the Caribbean SIDS and have identified, Darren, about 20 trainers to be trained. And we have launched the same program in the Pacific region and also in the Indian Ocean and in the Atlantic SIDS region. The screen has a link there where all our listeners, participants who may wish to participate and be trained as trainers are most welcome to lodge the application. So, Darren, that is my presentation this morning. I do trust that what we have shared will assist, give some thought to our small island developing states and our developing countries in general, some ideas on steps on how we could recover from this COVID-19 and deliver on the SDG. Thank you kindly.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much, Sai. And of course, as your presentation highlighted, it comes down now to the details to address the issues that were mentioned earlier on. So thank you very much for sharing all the focus on the SIDS and the partnerships. That is a key area, and you highlighted a lot of detail. And I did want to come back to one particular area that you did touch on, and that was the Abyssal initiative. And I think there was a lot in there. That, of course, that was a voluntary commitment announced at the 2017, I think, Ocean Conference. Can you maybe elaborate or tell us what is the future outlook of that initiative as, I guess, you look forward to the second UN Ocean Conference coming up in Lisbon?
Thank you very much, Mr. Swanson. Yes, indeed. Look, the Abyssal initiative was a 3-year initiative that has come to an end in 2021. And we are going to organize an event at the Second Ocean Conference in Lisbon to showcase this voluntary commitment and the products that have been attained for it. There are requests received from the beneficiary countries, and in fact, other islands who are now also sponsoring states for the program to continue beyond 2021 and perhaps beyond the second United Nations Ocean Conference. So at this stage, we are looking for partners, the International Seabed Authority and UN DESA, looking for partners to join us to continue in the second phase, what we are hoping to be an Abyssal 2 period of support to small island developing states. Thanks, Darren.
Very good. Thank you, Sai, for elaborating on that. I think before I encourage participants, if there are further questions for Sai, to place them in the chat space. And if Sai, if you have a bit of time to hang on online with us, if there's a tweet-like response you can offer to any questions that do appear in the chat space, please feel free to do so. Just before we move on to our next topic, though, I wanted to touch on, I guess, another aspect of your presentation. And I think early on in your presentation, Sai, you had talked about 4 targets, 4 of the SDG 14 targets that were, I guess, daylighting here in 2020 that where progress had lapsed in 2020. So a sort of a question for participants is, what further actions should the international community do to address the unfulfilled 4 SDG 14 targets that lapsed in 2020? And of course, Sai, you had highlighted 4 targets. It was target 14.2 on sustainably managing and protecting marine and coastal ecosystems, target 14.4, which was effectively regulating harvesting and to end overfishing, target 14.5, which was to conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine resources, and target 14.6, which was prohibiting certain forms of fisheries subsidies prohibiting certain forms of fishery subsidies, which contribute to overcapacity and overfishing. So we're looking to participants, and I think to collect this information, I encourage participants to use the chat space right now. I do have the Slido up, but we're going to move on here to the next presentation here shortly. But if you have thoughts on what further actions the international community should do to address the unfulfilled SDG 14 targets that lapsed in 2020, please add that on. So in the chat space, we will note it's target 14.2, 14.4, 14.5, and 14.6. So your thoughts in the chat space on those particular areas will be appreciated. All right. Thank you very much, Sai, for your covering that topic in such good breadth and depth. Now, without further ado, we do want to move on to our next presentation for this session. And colleagues, it's a pleasure for me to welcome Honorable Andy Labonte. Andy is a member of the National Assembly in the Republic of Seychelles. Welcome, Honorable Labonte. You are a member of the Standing Orders Committee and the House Committee, and your journey to politics has begun recently, we understand, about a year ago with the inspiration of making the Seychelles a better place. Your dream is to see all of Seychelles in one family. Toward that, you advocate for unity and tolerance in everyday life, and with a mindset working together to achieve a common goal. Mr. Labonte, you have worked in a number of areas that have given you experience: the hotel tourism sector as manager, as youth peer counselor, Central Regional Scout Commissioner, and even as a taxi driver, where you've had the opportunity to meet, interact with people from all different walks of life. And I'm sure that has shaped your perspectives on life, and also your ability to inform all of your decisions. So thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Labonte, and the floor is yours.
Very much, Mr. Swanson. A greeting from our beautiful island, the Seychelles. As you've said, I am Honorable Andy Labonte, elected member of the National Assembly, Republic of Seychelles. Allow me to give you a brief country profile on Seychelles. The Seychelles Island, situated between 6 and 10 degrees south of the equator, is made up of 115 islands scattered in over 1.4 million square kilometers ocean space, referred to as our exclusive economic zone, EEZ. Our 459 square kilometers of land mass houses around 98,000 people. Small in terms of population and land mass, but big in terms of ocean space. The Seychelles EEZ is among the top 25 largest in the world, and Seychelles is a global biodiversity hotspot with 2 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The Seychelles economy is traditionally based on 2 major pillars, that is tourism and the wild-caught fisheries sector. As every country, we have also not been spared from the COVID pandemic. Although the number of active COVID cases is on the decline, over 39,000 people have at some point contracted COVID-19 over the past 2 years in the Seychelles. Since the beginning of the pandemic to now, we have sadly lost 163 of our brothers and sisters from this deadly disease. At the moment, the number of the active cases is less than 450 individuals. The decline in the number is due to a series of measures that was taken by the government to curb the impact of the disease. His Excellency, President Nauen, has been on the mission from the beginning to obtain enough vaccine for the whole population of Seychelles. As of yet, 80% of the population has had 2 vaccine doses, and 33 has had 2 booster doses. Businesses has been hit hard, especially the smaller businesses, but the government had put in place various mechanisms that could lighten the load. For example, there are various finance schemes, some with very little interest rate. There was also an amnesty on taxes for people that were struggling to pay their taxes with the decline in COVID cases and the arrival of tourism. Tourist business has started to flourish again. Now we can move on to the second slide, please. The tourism industry is the most important in the Seychelles. In 2018, this industry contributed to over 30% of our GDP. Major events such as the 2008 economic recession, the COVID-19 pandemic, amongst others, is enough to affect people's ability to travel. Prior to the pandemic in 2019, the Seychelles saw an arrival of close to 400,000 tourists in 1 year. In 2020, the number went down to just over 114,000. In 2021, saw a rise to over 182,000 visitors. 2020 is also looking very promising thus far, with our numbers exceeding that of this time last year. In his recent State of the Nation address, the SONA, the President of the Republic of Seychelles, His Excellency, President Nauen, made mention that although there is a drop in the number of tourist arrivals to our shore, the tourists contribute to the economy in a remarkable. It is true that Seychelles has more to offer than its sea and sand, but the majority of our visitors come to enjoy our warm waters, pristine environment. Blue economy is a major part of tourism transaction, and as a nation, we keep adapting and transforming our economy to ocean-based activity. Seychelles also provide the ideal condition for the best sport fishing and lucrative businesses. Now we can move to the next slide, please. Fisheries is the second most important pillar of our economy. The population relied heavily on fish protein as opposed to other protein. We have a fish diet of over 64 kg per person per year. A great portion of our population is directly employed by this sector. In 2018, the fisheries sector contributed 27% to the Seychelles GDP. This includes export, including canned tuna, vessel, and company expenditure, including all auxiliary services, access fee from the EU FPA, Sectoral Support Fund, license fee. This is what the concept of the blue economy is all about. We want to be smart users of our ocean, maximizing the benefit and spreading this benefit across the society, but being very careful of not compromising sustainable, our prime directive. This includes conservation of our marine resources, and of course, fighting IUU, illegal, unreported, unregulated fisheries. The wild-caught fisheries has also seen a decline in some species. To help restore some of our fish stock, the government has come up with fisheries management plan, which control the fishing of those species. For example, having close fishing session. In 2018, the Ocean Health Index, OHI, ranked Seychelles first in Africa. Globally, the island nation came out 33rd among 220 countries and territories. We can move on to the next slide, please. Seychelles is positioned where it is. Two main pillars of the economy is volatile, largely depend on global economy. And in the case of fisheries, it is overexploited. COVID-19 has taught us that we have no choice but to diversify our economy. Being an ocean state, it makes more sense for us to look towards the sea for the country diversification. New policies or exciting ones has been amended to steer the development of new innovation, blue economy related businesses. One of the key opportunities is the exploration and feasibility of new and emerging maritime sector, including marine-based aquaculture, among others. Next slide, please. The Seychelles is committed to attain all the objectives outlined in the SDG 14. As a large ocean state, life below water is a way of life for us. Our environment and ocean is one of the most pristine in the world. We pride ourselves as champions in matters of the blue economy. The government has ascended various environment protection law with hefty fines. Several policies and other governmental initiatives has also been developed. The local population is also very more involved, and everyone does their part to protect our environment and ocean. There are regularly beach cleanups on all of our islands, and these are done by groups, but as well as individuals. The great rule is that each time you go to the beach, you are encouraged to not only clean up after yourself, but to also pick up at least 5 pieces of litters left by others or washed ashore by the current. As an island state, a lot of our parties and gatherings are done on the beach. That usually involve a lot of balloons and decoration. Recently, the government has had a blanket ban on balloons as well as plastic straws. There has also been initiative discussed with sinners with regards to the discard of the fish aggregating device, FADS. These have to be disposed in a responsible manners so as not to destroy our coral. FADS are now labeled with GPS for better location. Our Navy capacity has been enhanced so that they can better survey our large EEZ. They are now using technology such as drone to be able to see further. As part of our depth swap initiative, the government of Seychelles has been able to protect 30% of its ocean, with some of these areas being no-take zone, thus allowing the restoration of those habitats and their biodiversity. A number of fisheries management plans has been initiated to allow the restoration of certain species. For example, there is a closed fisheries for lobster, whereby fishermen are allowed to harvest lobster at only certain time of the year. This also applies to sea cucumber harvest amount, and etc. We can move to the next slide, please. With the launch of aquaculture in Seychelles, there is anticipation for an economic boost. More fisheries infrastructure, such as marketplace, has been built in the last few years, which allow our fishermen to sell their fish in a more hygienic manner. Seychelles is actively participating in the Dubai Expo 2020, and we have had a Fisheries gala in search of new market potential for our local fishermen. Research and development remain a top priority for Seychelles. We have collaborated with some other countries, such as Mauritius and the Nexton research vessel, to survey part of our ocean so as to better understand life below waters. Can move to the next slide, please. I will briefly go on few projects that Seychelles has undertaken, which will really help us bounce back from the COVID-19 pandemic. SDG 14.5 asks that countries conserve at least 10% of coastal and marine areas, consistent with national and international law and based on the best available scientific information by the year 2020. In Seychelles, I am proud to say that we have surpassed this number. At present, we have protected 30% of our ocean and 50% of our land. The marine protected areas is divided into 3 zones. Areas classified as Zone 1 are areas of high biodiversity protection. Zone 2 are areas of medium biodiversity protection and sustainable uses. And Zone 3 are areas of multi-use. Can we move to the next slide, please? The Seychelles launched its aquaculture industry in October last year, 2021, as a means to diversify its economy. The government has invested in a few infrastructure which will facilitate the development of this new sector. It is to be noted that fish farmers in the Seychelles will be mostly for export as a means to bring in foreign currency in the country. A few species, such as tiger prawns, will be sold on the local market. At present, Seychelles imports over 250 tons of prawns from other countries annually, brought from the local people, but also for the tourist industry. With prawns being produced locally, there will be no need to import and thus reduce the amount of foreign currency that leave the country. This new industry will not only create a premium quality basket of seafood product, but it will also create jobs as well as increase the entrepreneurial sector, as there will be support services that will be needed by the industry. With COVID, a lot of businesses has had to close down because of financial difficulties. This new industry will allow those businessmen to venture into different kinds of businesses and thus improve their quality of life. With quite a number of workers losing their job during the pandemic, the government has put in place several schemes. One of such schemes is the reskilling scheme, which has allowed people to learn new skills and essentially move into different sectors. A lot of emphasis is being put on the development of the blue economy sector. The last slide, please. When the decline in tourism in the past 2 years, Seychelles has had to look at other sources of income with a limit in land masses. We had no choice but to turn towards the sea. The fisheries industry is what has kept the country afloat during those difficult 2 years. The Seychelles exports a lot of fish, frozen and canned. Perth, sinners, saw Seychelles as a crew change hub at a time when it was very difficult to enter a lot of our neighboring countries. Without the ocean, we are nothing. I have reached to the end of my presentation, and I hope you have enjoyed it, and I welcome your question, if any. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honorable Labonte, and we very much appreciate that you have taken us right down to water level, so to speak, to what is happening on the ground, specifically in the efforts of the Seychelles. And we appreciate the detail that you've shared with us across a number of areas. I want to share on the screen right now the activity, Honorable Labonte, that we're seeing from participants on the forum's poster and discussion page. And I might also invite Navoti back to join the discussion if you're still online with us, Sai. So just some questions for, I guess, the two of you as we sort of near the halfway point of this session here today. Honorable Labonte, you had talked about the blue economy quite a bit in your presentation. And as on the screen here is the discussion page, and participants of the forum have been sharing examples of good practice. And I see here that one good practice was an education for sustainable development with a systemic approach for a blue economy and green economy. And we have a nice picture here of an example of an initiative, Education for Sustainable Development on the Blue Economy. Mr. Labonte, can you expand a bit on the Blue Economy initiative within the Seychelles and how that's, I guess, maybe does education play a role in that?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, in Seychelles, as I've said in my presentation, this is one of the main sector, and especially during the pandemic, because tourism was the main one. But since the pandemic, we have to earn some foreign exchange, and it was mainly from the fisheries sector. And for us, this shows us that the blue economic is one of the very important sector for us, and which means no matter what will happen, but still will be managed to at least earn certain living from the blue economy, and especially under the sea, because we are paying lots of attention on preservation of the sea itself and under it, because at times we don't really see what is happening under the sea, and we tend to think that whatever we throw in the sea, it doesn't have an impact. But actually, for us, we've seen that it has an impact on the fisheries sector, and that's what we're trying to protect.
Excellent example. So the blue economy is becoming a part of the vocabulary of a lot of people around the world, and for good reason. I think I look further on this page, Honorable Labonte, and I think I see there is one column, and the third column of this page was a question to participants about how has COVID-19 impacted life below water. And I think this is an interesting example that someone posted here about an article from a few years ago about how 2020 was the year of the quiet ocean. And I think it highlighted how I think the fact that the global sort of trade, everything slowed during the pandemic, and it highlighted that the impact that we're having on the oceans during that quiet period. So that was, I thought that was quite interesting. And even below this, there was a posting also that on the other side of things, it was a quiet year for traffic on the oceans, and that may have resulted in some in improvements in some aquatic life. But they also noted too here that pandemic-associated plastic waste and increased use of face masks was starting to pollute the ocean as well. So two things happening, I guess, at the same time in the pandemic. Any thoughts from your perspective on, I guess, some of the challenges you saw during the COVID as you were linked to the oceans?
Well, as for us in Seychelles, we always try to see the positive of everything, and what we've noticed is that like the green turtle, which we get it usually that come to lay eggs on lots of our beaches, and during the pandemic, since there was not much tourists on the beach, and it looked like there was more of the green turtle that come to lay eggs on the beaches. But in terms of the mask, it's true it can be a danger for our blue economy. But what in Seychelles we're really trying to do is that, as we've said, wherever you go to the beach, you don't only clean your littering, but you also try to clean what you've seen that doesn't belong to the ocean. But what we are also trying to do is that try to use instead of the mask that you use and then you throw it away, try to use cloth mat so that you can wash afterward and you can reuse it again. So that's what we're trying to do in Seychelles.
Excellent. Yes. Now I recall in your presentation that the initiative where you're wanting the public, the citizens, to contribute to the cleanups on the beaches as well. So thank you for that. Yeah, it is interesting to see during the COVID period both sides of the quiet ocean and then also some of the additional impacts that are happening. I want to thank you very much, Honorable Labonte, for sharing your fresh perspective on the Republic of Seychelles. And participants, I want to thank you also for sharing your insights on the forum's discussion page and encourage everyone to continue to do so. So on behalf of everybody, Honorable Labonte and Mr. Navoti, I thank you for all your interventions and contributions to the forum for today. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Colleagues, we are at the halfway point of our forum right now, and I want to take us back to I want to take us back to where we're at right now, and I think what we are going to do at this point, sorry if I get back to where we're at. One moment, please. All right. Right now, we're going to take a short break, short 3-minute break, and before we return, and Ms. Gina Polaska from the Asia Europe Foundation will introduce our next speaker and next set of speakers, and we will continue on with the forum. But right now, we'll give everybody a chance for a quick stretch and a quick maybe a refresh of the coffee or the water, and we'll see you back in 3 minutes. Well, welcome back, colleagues. And Gina, I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Darren. We had an excellent first half of our meeting today, and then we will continue in that mode. We still have amazing 3 speakers ahead of us. So thank you so much for staying with us. Please keep in mind that we are counting on your active participation, both in our polls, asking questions on the WebEx chat, as well as adding on your resources and sharing your expertise on the Padlet. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Yegor Volovik. He's coordinator of the Northwest Pacific Action Plan within United Nations Environment Programme in Japan. He has more than 25 years of management and technical experience in marine and freshwater resources, environment, climate change, as well as climate risk and disaster risk management. And among his rich experience, he is also very knowledgeable about regional ocean governance and the establishment of the multilateral environmental agreements and intergovernmental mechanisms. And this is also relating to some questions about ocean governance that have been appearing on the Padlet. Dr. Volovik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gina. Give me just 1 second to set myself up. I want to share my screen. Do you see it? Please confirm.
Yes, we can see your screen and even more, but at the moment we can also see your presentation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Gina. And before I start, I really want to thank the organizers for the opportunity for me to present the Northwest Pacific Action Plan, which is a part of UN Environment administered Regional Seas program. We have heard so far presentation from the national perspective, from Korea and the Seychelles. We also heard from Mr. Navoti the UN DESA perspective from the seats. So my presentation will be quite different, but still it will make the picture more complete in terms of presentation of different organizations and bodies contributing to delivery on Sustainable Development Goal 14. During my presentation, I will be showing some QR codes with links to specific websites or web pages which you can get more information. So please make screenshots or later you can find these links in presentations. So before I start, I want to speak about Regional Seas Program. Regional Seas Program is one of the 3 pillars of the regional ocean governance. It contains 16 regional seas conventions, or as we call them, multilateral environmental agreements, and 2 action plans. We are 47 years old in terms of Regional Seas Program. It started in early 70s, and it was launched in 1974 following the 1972 UN Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm. Currently, more than 146 countries are involved in the Regional Seas Program, and it's still being developed. So nearly all coastal areas and large marine ecosystems are covered with the corresponding conventions or action plan, but still there are some areas also, and it's still being developed at the moment. What is the Regional Seas Program? It provides a legally binding framework to protect the marine environment at the regional level. It contains 16 regional seas conventions and 2 action plans. And actually, NOPAP is one of the 2 action plans. The other one is COPSI, which is our neighboring Regional Seas Program to the south from us. Regional CIS program is governed, and that's a very key it's governed by participating countries through whether conference of parties or intergovernmental meetings. As I already said, Regional CIS program was launched with key involvement of the United Nations Environment Program, and 7 of the 18, so there are 3 different types of Regional CIS program bodies, conventions or action plans. So 7 of them are directly administered by UNEP, and those are highlighted in the left bottom corner, and you see Northwest Pacific is one of them. So we are UNEP provides secretariat functions to those regional CIS programs. So we are staff members of UNEP, but also so we have a second hat, which is we are governed by the member states. They're also not UNEP administered. So in the so-called independent regional CIS program, which are governed by themselves, by the mechanisms, so that they are governed by the countries without direct UNEP involvement, though still they are coordinated by the regional CIS program. And also independent, which are established not under auspices of UNEP, and those are 4 of regional CIS program mentioned on the slide. This is, as they say, one picture says 1,000 words. I understand that this slide is very busy, and I'm not going to go in detail of every single picture on the slide, but what it does represent, it's a very good presentation of a timeline, how the regional CIS program was developed, starting in the early 1970s and all the way through to the current times. And as I say, it's still not completed, it's still being under development. So, but you see in the red circle, NOPAP was established in 1994. Talking about NOPAP, NOPAP stands for Northwest Pacific Action Plan, and it is a part of directly administered by UNEP Regional CIS program. We have 4 member states, namely China, Japan, Republic of Korea, and Russia. And the overall goal is protection of the marine and coastal environment in the region. You also see the geographical scope of the NOPAP covering these water bodies. NOPAP is an intergovernmental mechanism, and we are governed by the country through intergovernmental meeting. This meeting happens on an annual basis, and we work on program of work on biennial basis. So it contains the national focal points of the 4 governing member states. For the day-to-day management and carrying out secretariat functions, regional coordinating unit was established, and our coordinating unit has 2 offices. One office in Toyama, Japan, where I am based, and the second one is in Busan, Republic of Korea. So both offices are operational, and they provide coordination of the 4 regional activity centers established in each of the member states. You have on the left the 4 CRAC, which is special monitoring and coastal environmental assessment regional activity center dealing with biodiversity conservation and coastal assessment. DINRAC, which data and information network regional activity center. Marine Environmental Emergency Preparedness and Response Regional Activity Center, and Pollution Monitoring Center. We also have a formal working group on marine litter, and this is a formal working group established by the member states with national focal points and experts supporting technical activities and the program of work of this working group. And also we have a plethora of regional, global, and national partners we're engaged with during implementation of our activities. Let me speak a little bit in more detail on our regional activity centers. Data and Information Network Regional Activity Center is located in Beijing, in China, and it is mainly engaged with marine environmental data, databases, online available databases, endangered threatened species, red lists, books, also marine environmental standards, and also this center, it hosts a regional node, Northwest Pacific regional node on marine litter, of the Global Partnership of Marine Litter. You know, the GPA Secretariat, also hosted by UNEP. So it's another global platform which is grounded in the region with the help of NOPAP. Special Monitoring Coastal Environmental Assessment Regional Activity Center located in Toyama in Japan. These are our neighbors. And the key activities they include protecting of biodiversity, conservation of biodiversity, and also state-of-the-art scientific development and field of eutrophication assessment. They're dealing with harmful algal blooms, marine litter and microplastics. But as I mentioned, and you see the picture on the left, with state-of-the-art remote sensing of the marine environment. And one of the projects we're engaged with the global Google Global Earth Engine, which has a lot of potential for the upscaling to the global level. The tool developed at the regional level could be upscaled to the global level, which we're busy with within this project. Also dealing with marine and coastal biodiversity and eutrophication assessment. Marine Environmental Emergency Preparedness and Response Regional Activity Center, or MERAC, located in Republic of Korea in Daejeon. It was established together by UNEP and IMO, and it stands a little bit aside from the rest of regional activity centers, as they are dealing with disaster risks and response activities related to tackling oil and hazardous noxious substances spills in the region. And their project includes such activities as responding to marine pollution emergencies, full-scale oil and HNS spill response exercises, data collection assessment, best practices in terms of real-time data management, protocol exchange, engagement with coastal guards in the region. So this is a really real-time activities and response. So this MERAC Center is contributing to this type of activity. But also marine litter management and, of course, public awareness and participation. And the fourth regional activity center operating under NOPAP framework is POMRAC, Pollution Monitoring Regional Activity Center, located in Vladivostok in Russia. And it deals with the developments of targets and indicators for ecological quality objectives, making assessments on persistent toxic substances, persistent organic pollutants, microplastics. They're also engaged in marine spatial planning and ecosystem-based management, integrated coastal zone planning and management, but also state of marine environment reports. We are currently preparing the third stage of State of Marine Environment report, which hopefully will be launched next year. NOPAP is operating under the midterm strategy to 2018-2023. And what I want to draw your attention to is how well this midterm strategy is aligned with SDG 14. So we have 5 priority areas, 4 thematic priority area, like support ecosystem-based integrated coastal and river basin management, assessment of state of the marine and coastal environment, preventing and reducing land and sea-based pollution, and conserving marine and coastal biodiversity. And last but not least is cross-cutting, strengthening regional cooperation, where we have a number of activities which are cutting across various regional activity centers and also engaging with different partners in our region. In terms of marine litter activity, NOPAP was one of the bodies who developed one of the first regional action plans on marine litter. And that was approved back in March 2008, so over 14 years ago. And we're currently coming to the state when we're going to approve a revised version. So the intergovernmental meeting, which we're planning to hold, hosted by China in the end of March, will hopefully approve the revision of this action plan on marine litter. And it's dealing with key three elements in terms of prevention of inputs of litter into the system, monitoring of quantities and distribution of marine litter within the NOPAP region, and also specific activities to remove existing marine litter. As I said, we have a formalized working group engaged with activities on marine litter. This is a highlight from one of the exercises. That was a large-scale exercise implemented by and coordinated by MERAC, this Delta Joint Oil Spills Response Exercise, implemented back in July 2016 in China. And in the bottom of this slide, you can see how much resources were involved in successful holding of this exercise, engaging with all four member states and different ministries, coastal guards, and all other responsible parties in each of the states. In terms of biodiversity conservation, we're also busy with a number of activities, such as development databases on red list species, assessment of blue carbon for seagrass fields, study on indicator species for biodiversity in NOPAP region, as well as marine spatial planning and marine protected areas. One of the highlights which stands first on this slide is the Regional Action Plan on Marine and Coastal Biodiversity Conservation, which we have been developing for a number of years, and we are coming to the point where we will have it approved, hopefully in the end of this month at the IGM. So we will have another regional legal framework to contribute to the delivery on Sustainable Development Goal 14. Another highlight which I wanted to mention is tripartite environmental ministers meeting between Japan, Korea, and China. This is a platform established more than 15 years ago, and Russia later joined this activity. And what we traditionally organize in the NOPAP region is marine litter management workshops. The key of these workshops is that they are organized at the local level in the member states with engagement of grassroots, NGOs, schools, academia. So you see on the slide that the last one we had in person was back in 2019. Since then, we moved online, and these workshops were held in 2020 and 2021 online, with the corresponding international coastal cleanup campaigns implemented since 2006. And you see on the left all those cleanup campaigns were coordinated. However, since then, in 2020 and 2021, each individual state implemented the cleanup campaigns by themselves. So we hope that this year we will be able to organize another cleanup campaigns in person. So NOPAP is really in this region a leading regional platform for implementation of ocean-related sustainable development goals. First and foremost, we work on SDG 14 and directly contributing to partnerships and the goals, which is SDG 17. But also indirectly, some activities attributing to to different activities which are shown on this slide. So in terms of
if I can interfere a little bit, because we actually are running out of time and we have a question from our participants. Like what you are presenting is excellent, but while you are wrapping up, if you could also address the issue what is specifically happening about the ocean protection activities, including addressing plastic pollution. I think you mentioned marine litter a couple of times, cleaning up the areas, and now you are like, you have this broad consultation process and next things coming up. If you can also highlight specifically what is happening with the plastic, that would be fantastic.
Okay. I will actually, this is my last slide. Well, I wanted to wrap up. So let me address the plastic issue first, and then I will wrap up for the entirety of this presentation. So marine litter and plastics is an issue which cuts across activities of all our regional activity centers and regional coordinating unit. We have a series of projects on that. So for instance, with global partnership of marine litter, we engaged in several projects related to the assessment of the inflow of marine plastics with flow of rivers. We have a number of activities on the regional action plan on marine litter, which include assessment of the state distribution and composition of plastic in various demonstrational pilot areas of the NOPAP region. We also, NOPAP, with support of the Ocean NGO from Republic of Korea, an overview has been prepared of the state of overview of plastic pollution in the NOPAP region with involvement of authors from all other member states. We work with FAO on the abandoned fishing gears. Fishery is not a part of mandate of NOPAP, but still in terms of from the plastic pollution point of view, we do engage with FAO in working with this. We implemented a series of studies talking with fishermen on how they address and how they work and remove actually plastic from the system. And there are many more activities which I will be happy to introduce, which I don't want to lose time at the moment. In terms of my presentation, what I want to conclude is that within nearly 30 years of the operation, NOPAP has developed a participatory approach to addressing environmental issues at a broader scale, engaging on the global agenda through UNEP on global ocean agenda, including SDGs, but not only, also post-2020 global biodiversity framework, global agreement on marine litter, and other strategic developments of the agenda. We do try to, and we try to link the regional networks with national counterparts across the region, and a number of successful projects show that it is done effectively. I want to highlight a very successful cooperation on specific technical topics, which are listed on the slide. I don't want to read them out. But last and certainly not least is building atmosphere of trust between the people and the countries of the region. Thank you very much. Over to you, Gina.
Thank you so much, Yegor. I didn't want to interrupt you, just I noticed that your presentation actually triggered a lot of activity on our chats. So this is why I wanted to somehow integrate it into your presentation. We have someone also like complimenting UNEP for the work and advocating for better publicity and dissemination of information, which I hope we are on this forum, we are helping.
That's exactly what we're doing, yes.
And I think like also because you mentioned a lot regional cooperation and partnership, as well as this issue of very close collaboration with very interesting countries that you have in your regional cooperation. There is also a question, I think you mentioned that this is not exactly the area of focus, but I'm going to just pass the question to you. If NOVAPAP takes a look at illegal fisheries, since it also directly affects marine ecosystems. So is this something that you are paying attention? And there is here example of China and fishing in protected areas.
No, thank you very much for this question. I already mentioned it somehow. I touched it just upon in my presentation. Yeah. No, fisheries is not a part of mandate of NOPAP. So our member states, as I already mentioned, that we are governed by the member states, and the member states that they don't want NOPAP to be. It's a wrong word. So they think that NOPAP is not really suited for working on fisheries. There are so many other bodies in the region which are heavily involved in this issue. So in order not to duplicate with all the member states decided to limit our fisheries intervention only from the pollution side. So we are not dealing with illegal fisheries as such under NOPAP framework.
I think you mentioned this indeed, so thank you so much for clarification, because I believe it is always good to highlight what is your mandate and how you are advancing towards accelerating SDGs implementation. And thank you so much for this rich presentation. And then I believe this would be further on discussed, because definitely it triggered quite some interest. And then I also see some activities on Padlet. So we would like to hopefully still by the end of this session have a chance to get back to you. So thank you so much. And I think we can advance to the next speakers in the agenda that would be talking about fisheries among, or it has expertise in fisheries science. Cornelia Nauen, she has a PhD in fisheries science, marine ecology from Kiel University in Germany. She worked in the Fisheries Department of the Food and Agriculture Organization and later served in the European Commission in Development Cooperation and International Science Cooperation. Since 2010, Cornelia heads the non-profit organization Mundus with international membership focus on sustainable living with the ocean and supporting small-scale fisheries, the people of the sea and their cultures in multiple ways. And I would like to now invite everybody to the presentation on people on change journeys for implementation. Dear Cornelia, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. If I may suggest that perhaps Warren continues sharing his screen with my slides. First of all, let me say how honored I feel about this invitation, and also pay tribute to the excellent presentations we have already had the benefit of. You will see that compared to the more institutionally oriented presentations, I will share with you, or let's say we'll change perspective a little bit and cast some light on how people, normal citizens, fishers, coastal populations can engage in change journeys for the implementation of SDG 14, and therefore be an important complement to what we've heard in terms of the fantastic international institutional collaboration. In the next slide, we'll see that when we look at the overall SDGs, SDG 14 is one of the key elements of the biosphere. Above that sustains our society, and 8 SDGs refer to essential functions in society, like zero hunger, quality education, gender equality, and the likes. And that also then is echoed in 4 SDGs that address drivers of the economy, like decent work, reduced inequalities, responsible consumption and production that concerns us all, and let's say the connecting power is, of course, through partnerships for the goals. Now, let me take you a little bit to the biological, ecological side of the ocean and what science has revealed about how it has evolved under human impact. So the next slide will show you a drawing that many of you will have known already or seen already. It's actually quite emblematic. What it illustrates is how marine ecosystems have been eroded over time. But what we see and what we grapple with every day is what we call shifting baseline syndrome. That is the fact that every generation of professionals take the state of the ocean at the beginning of their career as a reference point. And that prevents a lot of people from realizing how badly the structure and the functioning of marine ecosystems have already been affected, and so far principally by fisheries. Huge research collaborations have engaged in historical reconstructions, and these document the steep decline of big predatory fish, for example, in the North Atlantic. And so by the end of last century, around 2000, Christensen and co-workers, for example, show that the decline accelerated over the last 50 years. And so since World War II, only 1/3 of the biomass was left. But to note, it was eroded even before that. A wider study covering the world's ocean, not only the North Atlantic, where there is a lot of historical fishing, including industrial fishing, and that wider study confirms this same trend in all other parts of the ocean, and that it has been accelerating over the last 40 years. Overfishing, which we see, and you see, that less and less big fish are left and more small fish, plankton, jellyfish, etc., are populating the ocean. This is a trend driven by overfishing in the economic and in the ecological sense, too much capacity for the resource at hand, and that has been reinforced by other stresses such as ocean warming and pollution. We already heard by the previous speaker the negative effects of pollution. Now, let us look at the next slide, where we look specifically at industrial overfishing, which is driven by several factors. A major one is subsidies, the harmful type of subsidies, which, as we heard already, were supposed to have been eliminated by 2020 in the context of the WTO, but it's not yet been the case. There is a draft text in front of the negotiating parties, and we do hope that there is some progress at the ministerial level in June, and that they be able to clinch a deal. But these subsidies have driven massive overcapacity compared to the available resources, and in a global market, competition and often poor oversight create spaces for illicit practices, from illegal, unreported and unregulated IUU fishing to labor abuse and worse. Capacity enhancing harmful subsidies have been estimated by Sumaila and co-workers 2 years ago at US dollars 22 billion per year, mostly to industrial fleets. A subset of this is constituted by bottom trawling, which expanded massively from the North Atlantic to Africa and Asia. Currently, bottom trawling contributes about 6% of food fish globally. That's about equivalent to what small-scale fishers the world over produce. However, the technology is known for its devastating effect on life on the bottom floor and the habitat structures in the sea bottom. And a recent study revealed that because it's an active gear, it pushes a huge nets through scraping over the sea bottom and dragging it through dense water. Its CO2 footprint equals that of the aeronautics industry. So in times of climate change, we need to take a fresh look at what other types of impacts are as well. Now, luckily, we have some modern satellite observation technologies which have started to cast some light on what's going on the water, far away from the purview of port authorities and coast guards. And what we see in the picture you see there is really a call for action. Industrialized for overfishing, particularly of vessels flying flags other than those, for example, of coastal states in West Africa, where I want to home or focus on a little bit more, or having recently gone local, have been shown to underreport their catches very, very heavily. They are often in direct competition with local artisanal fishers whose incomes have consequently gone down over the last decade. That has also been quantified and is quite substantial. It has impacts on food security and all kinds of other ripple effects. The increase of fishing for fish meal, moreover, for dozens of fish meal and fish oil factories that have sprung up in recent years, for example, in countries like Mauritania, Senegal, the Gambia, and elsewhere, is pitching export for animal feed for luxury aquaculture production against local affordable human food. That poses threats to food security, not only for the coastal populations, but if we remain in West Africa, well into the Sahel countries without coasts, which used to be regional markets for traditionally processed small pelagics and a trade and processing activities, etc., which created income for many men and women in value chains. Now, let's narrow down further with the next slide, where, I mean, I was just wanting to sort of paint a broad brush figure and now take you on a journey of one example, at least, that can illustrate what can be done to help create alternatives, and turn alternatives bottom up that would be complementary and supportive to the implementation of the institutional frameworks we have heard about so far. And here I report on some work we have done as Mundus Maris, but with many other partners, and based on a lot of this earlier work on site and spurned also by assessments of the hidden harvest of largely unrecorded artisanal fisheries, we were looking jointly with fishers at possible responses. So together with the men and women of all elements of the value chains and all regions and age groups across Senegal, researchers and administrations, at the end of 2018, we launched what we together call the SSF Academy, the Small Scale Fisheries Academy, to recognize the knowledge and experience of these people, but also the need to not only look back, but also acquire new capabilities to master the future. The Small Scale Fisheries Academy is designed as a safe, multi-actor platform for respectful dialogue, joint learning, co-creation of knowledge and innovation for the recovery, protection and sustainable use of marine and coastal resources and prosperous artisanal fisheries. So to buck the trend that is sort of downward. It provides operational support for the implementation of the voluntary guidelines for securing sustainable small-scale fisheries in the context of food security and poverty eradication. That these guidelines were adopted by the FAO Committee of Fisheries in 2014 after 3 years of worldwide bottom-up consultations. The Academy articulates the Global Sustainable Development Goals and promotes action respectful of the local populations concerned. It therefore connects local concerns to the global issues, where otherwise very often people think, well, you know, these global things, they are somehow not for me. And we work very hard that, you know, there is this strong connection between the global and the local issues. And as a driver to find robust solutions that work for people and planet. Now, let me illustrate just in one small case on the next slide, how every change journey starts with a vision of a happy life of the individuals and of groups of academy learners. And the vision is very important to provide a sense of direction. In the background of the slide, you see the concentric circles. You start with the individual, but then it's the family, it's the neighborhood, it's the community, etc., to garner collective action, which will then actually stick and bring about change in practice. Working with drawings is important to actively include adults who have had little or no access to formal education, which is unfortunately quite widespread in fishing and coastal communities. Based on the vision that the people designed and which were validated by families and peers, all learners then draw up a change journey drawing towards an objective which they think they can achieve in 1 year. And to get there, they define quarterly intermediary objectives together with identifying obstacles which they might encounter on the way they need to tackle, and also what could be supportive conditions and people. Now, the next slides show you how that looks in practice. Nabia, the person we saw in the previous slide, is a micro fish vendor in Yoff, Senegal. And she drew up this goal. It's about, well, she's started out with being able to take to market one bucket, one crate of fish and sell that in 1 week. Her objective for the year was to manage to sell 6 crates per week after 1 year and improve her means of transport to market. So the next slide shows you how she wanted to go about it. Next slide shows that she reduced first of all, her expenditures for tailored dresses, which she used to need for social events, and she cut back on expensive phone credit. That allowed her within 2 months to 3 months to indeed market 2 crates in the week, and then in the next round 3 crates per week after 6 months. Next slide. Here we go. It's and then the next slide shows that after a bit more than a year, but because don't forget, we are talking here about the additional difficulties engendered by the COVID crisis, Nabia managed to achieve her objective thanks to very careful and structured planning and sticking to what she had learned in the academy. In the process of improving her business, she also diversified the product line into dried fish in the market and was even able to improve the roofing of her house. Right, let's move on. And so by the end of last year, when the COVID pandemic, next slide, became less virulent, the Academy was able to pick up its activity with new workshops and particularly a refresher workshop so that people could take stock, how much they had achieved, how many obstacles they had managed, how they coped, and also draw up plans for the next year at personal and collective levels. The next slide shows how women participants have gained much confidence in the process. When we started, they tended to sit a little bit in the sideline, but over the period and being supported by these inclusive processes, they gained a lot of self-confidence, and their economic success also is, let's say, made them in some ways models for others as well. And some have now even attained leading positions in the local committee overseeing the academy work. And what we see is leading by example, that there is a new group of men and women who want to take up learning. And the ones who have gained already some experience are taking that experience into their economic interest groups and expand their interest beyond the immediate needs into wider topics that are important for the whole sector. And there is an interest to start similar experiences in other places, in Senegal and other countries, and to exchange between the groups for broader understanding and new opportunities to take action. So let's look at the last slide and what we can take home as the priority actions. Now, if we look at the macro level, the top priorities are to get the WTO to deliver on its promise to stop harmful subsidies in fisheries and no loopholes, because if, as a result, they would retire perhaps at least half the overcapacity and therefore increase the economics of the industrial fishery sectors, it would also create fresh space for the small-scale fishers who are so important for jobs and the local economies and food security. Several other speakers and people in the audience asking questions have also raised the issue of IUU fishing. It's a hugely important issue. These illicit activities affect large chunks of the global market and deprive legitimate operators of benefits and deprive countries of tax income. at a substantial level. So in addition, it destroys in a way, or let's say it devalues the recordings, because by definition, these things are not recorded. It falsifies the basis on which governments make investment and political decisions. And so it has multiple negative effects. And so research and management need to be strengthened, and IUU fishing curb. We put great hope into the successful conclusion of the negotiations, the 30-30 negotiations to protect 30% of the ocean of the land by 2030. That would be a major step towards the recovery of ecosystems, both on the ocean and the land. And we see that wherever we have peace and good international collaboration, united against climate change, we can achieve a lot through peaceful cooperation. Similarly, or complementary to that, the bottom-up priorities are to invest in people, education, health, gender equity and equality, fair institutions, fish for food and not for feed. And we are particularly motivated because this year is the International Year of Artisanal Fisheries and Aquaculture. And there is a great mobilization going on to really protect and consolidate and even expand the space for small-scale fisheries, which we see as fisheries of the future for fish for food. And to be able to mobilize more people, we see in practice how important it is to connect the immediate needs of people with the macro level political agendas for greater citizen engagement and empowerment. And a vehicle for that is all the strengths and all the effort to implement the SSF guidelines to support sustainable futures for the ocean and for people living from the ocean. Okay, that brings me to the very end.
Thank you so much, Cornelia, for this very practical presentation.
Where you can look up some more information.
Thank you so much for your. I just wanted to thank you for showing and personalizing these billions of people that are living out of the seas, because that was the question we have started with today. When we have this small survey that was looking into, okay, it is a livelihood of people, and then you have given very practical example on the grassroots level. What does it mean on the everyday life? How much impact the quality of the oceans and the quality of our environment, how much this matters to the population and the people that rely on it so strongly. So this was definitely excellent representation. We went today from different angles. We look at the national policies, at what regional organizations are doing, and then we come back to the communities and then empowerment of the communities. You have actually addressed one of the questions that have been on the chat, as you rightfully said during your presentation, regarding overfishing and also illegal fishing. And then we got some feedback that is strongly encouraging you to disseminate your work more and share the guidelines you have been presenting. We will do our part from our side. And this would be something that definitely will be important to highlight and bring to our attention. We will hopefully have still some time by the end of today to get back to all the speakers. But now I would like to thank you and move to our last but not least speaker, Harmen Spek. He is the Innovation and Solutions lead at the Plastic Soup Foundation, where he works to convince companies to change their systemic approach to the use of plastics. He has a background in media and design. He developed a great passion for materials and production. And when he started his work at the Plastic Soup Foundation, it made him extremely critical about the consequences of the often cheapest and most commonly used material of all, which is plastic. So this presentation, as you can see, will also touch upon microplastics, plastic pollutions, and then we would have some overview. The title is A Deep Dive into the World of Plastic and its Effects on SDGs 14. Dear Harmen, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Gina, for your nice introduction. At first, I'd like to thank the organizers for this this invitation and the occasion to speak to you all. And also thanks for the presenters before me. It is all highly interesting material that has come through till now. Yes, I'm Harmen Spek from the Plastic Soup Foundation, a Dutch NGO, only focusing on every single emission of plastic to the oceans or to the world, even to the environment. We try to do everything about that due to campaigning and also sorts of projects. I will start sharing my presentation now. So it's a deep dive into the world of plastics and and its effects to the oceans, to the environment, SDG 14, and also our health, because that's a very important aspect of plastic nowadays. But let's start at the beginning, simply with the start of plastic. In the early 1800s, it was discovered by accident that natural latex could be turned into a much stronger material, and that's vulcanized rubber, the first long chains, the first polymers. And this was the start of a long voyage that provided us many useful materials and products. At first, all the plastics were bio-based, but in 1907, the first fossil-based plastic was invented, and that was bakelite. In those days, household waste management was still quite easy, at least in my country. It was only about organic materials that served local benefits, like food for cattle or as fertilizer on fields. But in 1933, the first flexible plastic was invented, and this changed our daily lives to the fullest. With polyethylene, the industry introduced a totally new era, and an enormous diversity and volume of new plastic types would follow. In 1950, Life magazine celebrated these new opportunities as throwaway living. Everything would become easier with single-use plastics. And to be honest, the material was a novelty in that time. It was thin, it was transparent, you could even show your babies through it. It was strong, it was light, and especially it was cheap. So for 180 years long, the plastic industry has been blowing our minds with these amazing materials and products. And this is still an enormous growing market. So when we take a look at an old chart till 2015, we see the enormous curve in growth since 1950. This is only about worldwide plastic production. And we can also see that 50%, the lower layer of global plastic production, is destined for plastic packaging material. And this is really the main culprit regarding plastic waste issues worldwide. And it's even the main culprit in plastic emissions to the oceans. But this growth was not without consequence. Our waste has become really, really complex and therefore very hard to handle.
Also, waste management turned into waste transportations, and it was all centralized heavily in every country. Worse still, it has hardly any value, and about 80% of all plastics ever produced have been dumped or have ended up in our environment in devastating quantities. And with devastating effects. Even on the highest mountains and in the deepest places on Earth, like here in the Mariana Trench, we can find plastic waste nowadays. Scientists even predict that in 2050 there will be more plastic in the oceans than fish. And this is already happening. Due to this unbalance, there is an impact of plastic on everything that lives, even us. An intriguing example regarding this impact is an island group in the middle of the Great Pacific, the Midway Islands. You can hardly get any further from the inhabited world. But there is so much plastic floating around these islands that the albatrosses living there feed their chicks more plastic than real food. It is our plastic, it's our way of consuming that is affecting and killing these birds. So what was always presented to us as a fantastic material without worries is now starting to turn against us with incredible speed. But it's not only about waste. The emissions already start at the production and transportation of the raw material, the noodles. There are big losses worldwide of this material. But there's also a big emission, of course, of wear and tear of plastic products and just littering of plastic products. And of course, the disposal side is maybe the biggest culprit of all. And plastic products in the environment do not disappear. They fragmentize over time into microplastics. These microplastics are eaten by the smallest organisms and form the basis of our food chain. And speaking of SDG 14, life below water, about 95% of all ocean plastic is below the surface, the water surface. All of this results in the largest material emission of our time. But then suddenly we encountered a pandemic, and it seemed the world stopped spinning. Lockdowns, nobody on the street, tourism stopped, and nature came to rest. With some remarkable results. Clear water in Venice, waves of silence everywhere, and clear skies. It was something totally different for us. Is this the reset button for nature? Unfortunately not. Perhaps we were temporarily less of a disturbance to nature. But on the other hand, we produced an enormous amount of extra plastic waste. Medical waste would encounter a global growth of 10 times more weight than average. During the high tides of COVID, the use of single-use face masks is exploding. Half of the countries use more than 50 million face masks a day, even up to 500 million a day. And even though the pandemic showed a small dip in plastic production, the estimates of plastic growth are still alarming. We see a tripling towards 2050, and that will get us in an overload. Because there are already huge global challenges in processing all the plastic waste. Doubling or tripling the production will will really lead us to this plastic overload, and the volumes will get unmanageable. And unfortunately, you see that on the bottom, the red line, plastic recycling is not able to keep up the pace. This all has to do with the complexity of this actual family of materials. There are about 145,000 plastic types with all the specific features. Besides that, plastic products are often also very complex compositions, and they are filled with chemicals. So for most plastics, recycling on a good quality level is economically not feasible at all. But what about microplastics? We know that plastic products will fragmentize over time. There are even a lot of high-risk applications like added microplastics in cosmetics or wear of car tires and even wear of paint and fiber loss from clothes. Microplastics are already omnipresent in our world, in the air we breathe, in the water we drink, in the food we eat. So what does this mean for our health? But the actual question must be, does plastics make us sick? A growing group of scientists was already worried about this years ago, for our daily plastic exposure is very high. They related this exposure to so-called modern diseases like fertility problems and hormone disruptions. And it's not only about the materials, but also about the abundance of chemicals used to create the plastics. During the Plastic Health Summit of 2020, a conference we have organized now for the second time, scientists revealed some new disturbing research outcomes, because they found that plastic is already in the blood of cows and pigs. So what does that mean for us? Do we also have plastic in our blood? There is a plastic uptake by crops like lettuce, apple and carrots through their roots. And white blood cells are attacking microplastics in our bodies, but they don't survive. And plastic is even found in the placenta. So what does this mean for our children and next generations to come? So what insights did COVID-19 pandemic bring us? Well, nature showed us that it's very resilient and always eager to restore the balance. But the balance between plastics and nature has already been skewed for a very, very long time. So we must restore this balance as soon as possible. And the problem is we are still addicted to plastic, no matter what. Even during the COVID-19 pandemic, plastic was very important. So what change is needed? I think we really have to start cutting down on our plastic consumption habits wherever possible, and especially on the single-use plastics. We really start to develop safer materials that are closer to natural processes and lifespans, or start using existing materials that already do, like paper or other fiber materials. One thing that is really important is that industries should stop the narrative of plastic waste as a solvable business case. We have to solve it, but as a business case, it's not really fair to the world, because there are only small portions of all the plastic that are being recycled. Stop the plastic trade and take responsibility for your own country's waste. we really should stop with the plastic transition to other countries and even from product to product. What is happening right now is that plastic bottles are turned into yarn for clothing. That should not happen. Countries should take responsibility for their waste, but also sectors should take responsibility for their own waste. And the last but not least, we have to create plastic regulations that respect the environment and the living conditions of us and our fellow earthlings. Eventually, it all comes down to common sense. We know that we are dealing with a wolf in sheepskin. Plastic is highly versatile and great in solving all our daily problems. Unfortunately, it falls short in healthy livelihoods for generations to come. Maybe the efforts for a plastic treaty in Nairobi will be effective. Who knows? Let's hope so. Revolutionary scene, we have a big connection with the oceans. If we are able to keep the oceans clean, we probably are taking better care of ourselves. I foresee that plastic is not part of a healthy future. Change has to come. I'd like to thank you for your time and attention.
Harmen, thank you so much for this very powerful presentation and strong message regarding plastic. I have not been following closely, but I know that United Nations Environment Assembly has been looking into plastic treaty. I think it is supposedly to be binding one by 2024, so there is still a little bit of time. If we can advance that into the Slido, because we would like to do also the short quiz to also close it on an energy level, how much plastic is entering the oceans annually. If we can also see how many people is still with us. We got excellent comments on your presentation. Thank you for sharing such, don't hide the truth, sharing so honestly. And then powerful call for action on tackling plastic waste is important. If now also we have our audience to join us in how much plastic enters the oceans annually, also to practice before evaluation, because we are heading towards the end of today. I think this is very interesting second half of the session. We have started with looking at the regional cooperation, an excellent presentation from UNEP that is looking at what is happening in the region and what countries are doing specifically. Then we have looked into the grassroots movement, what people are doing, how they are affected by what is happening with the oceans. And then we moved to this huge issue of plastic waste and also what is happening with our lives. And then how much plastic is impacting what is happening with us. There has been question from you regarding the statistics. From what I know, that there is, regarding specifically plastic entering oceans, there is a variety of statistics, including over 12 million tons per year. So I think everybody already kind of was leaning towards that it's a lot and chose the right answer. And I just would like to thank all these excellent speakers for your contribution today. Please stay in touch in the sense that we will be sharing the materials and then further communicating about next steps. And then also I think Jean will be explaining what will be happening after this forum. But we are working very hard, mostly the UN OSD team, on compiling the report and making sure that all these insightful presentations and powerful messages are integrated in one place, and then we can pass it forward to a high-level political forum. Thank you so much, everyone. And I would like to pass the floor to Jean to close the forum.
Thank you very much, Gina, for the moderating the session and the words that you did really well at also communicating with the reacting to the presentations, which were very, very interesting again. And then I think it's again, I'm very surprised to see that, this session is already passed by 5 minutes over time. And so I'll try to be short, but this session on SDG 14, on life below the water, and particularly on how the ocean can help us to fight against and recover from COVID-19 and deliver the SDGs. It went so fast. We had very good presentations, discussion. I think I saw a bit the Padlet, and it was quite interesting comments there and information shared. Yeah, I feel again we just started to unveil some of the issues and solutions we need to talk. And obviously, if we had more time together, like 3 days, we could talk more. But that's the reality of it. So I'll just now like to talk about a few particularly interesting points that were discussed today. And I will apologize in advance for not really doing justice to the presenters and their excellent presentation and discussion. I will miss some information. I was myself very captured by the presentation. Didn't want to miss any word. So, but yeah, we heard this at the beginning. I mean, it was part of the even the first video. 89% of global transport of goods are happening on the sea, and 3 billion people rely on the ocean for their livelihood. This is very important. We talked about this Samoa pathway. I was a bit curious. I went to this Padlet. I didn't see any question about the Samoa pathway, so or everybody knows it very much. But anyway, I posted a link to on the Padlet in the Padlet for the ones who want to know more about this. We had first first presenter after the video, who had said COVID-19 and the potential for the blue economy for recovery. So areas like fisheries, aquaculture, coastal tourism, marine pharmaceutica, marine renewable energy, and marine transport. We also talked about the policy options for a blue economy transformation. So accurate valuation of oceanic resources, integrate ocean assets in national and local government strategies, develop adequate human and institutional capital, ensure policy coherence and build partnerships, develop smart fiscal incentives. Heard about the SDG 15, conserving at least 10% of the coastal and marine areas, which is consistent with national and international law and based on the best available scientific information. So then there's a connection also with the next speaker. The COVID-19 has revealed how many small island developing states, like the Republic of Seychelles, have somehow limited options, limited landmass for their economic development and survival, I would say. So namely tourism and fisheries. While this revealed the need for to diversify their economy, of which aquaculture is an option, which they are putting in place, they will still always be highly dependent on LT ocean. And that's, I think, as Honorary and Andy Labonte mentioned, he said, ocean is our way of life. And probably for this reason, the Republic of Seychelles is very active on implementing SDG target 14.5, reaching even far beyond 10% recommended. They succeeded to protecting 30% of their coastal and marine areas by 2020 through marine spatial planning. Efforts were also being made for such plastics are banned and also going at, I said, legislation, but also at individual levels. All residents going to the beach are not only aware that they could not throw the garbage, but also they must pick up plastics littering they find on the beaches. So, and I think education plays a major role in for people to be to develop awareness. We had the presentation of the Northwest Pacific Action Plan, where we learned that many different groups collaborating, collecting and sharing information on monitoring litter management, including different pollutants, marine litter, oil spills, and also doing disaster preparedness with member countries. And then I asked a question, I was asking a question in the chat about if I'm sure there are other groups in other regions, because that was a specific region. Then we had the marine ecosystem that is heavily destroyed. We heard that, and almost no bigger fish, mostly due to, beside other factors like ocean acidification and pollution, we heard, is the overfishing with bottom trawling, which is a good part of which is used for animal feeding, which is quite surprising. When we know that 3 billion people are relying on the ocean, as Gina mentioned, reiterated, and then knowing that it's very striking. So also we heard about this SSF Academy work in Senegal, showed how collecting action, we discussed this yesterday as well, somehow it connects with yesterday's meeting. We say collective action starts at individual level, and then it spreads around. So it's an instrument also for women empowerment, which also connects with yesterday's forum, actually session of the forum. And I very much like this sentence: investing people, education, health, gender equality, equity, and fair institutions. And then this sentence: fish for food, not for feed, which I very much appreciated. And at macro level, the presentation also highlighted the importance to stop harmful fishery subsidies and then curbing the IUU fishing other ways. And then this was also mentioned by the speakers from Seychelles. And the last presentations that made us really diving in, and as the title mentioned, in the world of plastics and its effect on SDG 14, and the effect on also on us and the food we consume. And it proposed solutions basically to cut down our plastic use and consumption, which somehow connects also with the presentation of Seychelles. Well, they do. They know how they really rely on the ocean, and they know how this is important. So, and plastic is very a threat to their livelihood as well. I'd like to thank, I could go on and on, but it was very, very interesting. I cannot capture everything, but of course, as Gina mentioned, we'll have a report, and this is captured, and also the video recordings will have a report that we'll produce and that will be available on the webpage. I'd like to thank all the speakers for their very informative presentation and discussions today. Mr. Kim Hyun-tae, Director General of the International Cooperation Policy Bureau, the Ministry of Ocean and Fisheries of the Republic of Korea. He was there to a video, which was very good. Mr. Navoti, Chief of the SIDS Unit, a Division for Sustainable Development Goals at the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UN DESA in New York. The Honorable MD Labonte, Member of the National Assembly of the Republic of Seychelles. Mr. Yegor Volovik, Coordinator of the Northwest Pacific Action Plan, NOAP, Regional Coordinating Unit, Ecosystem Integration Branch, Ecosystem Division at the United Nations Environment Program in Toyama City, in Japan. And Ms. Cornelia Nauen, President of Mundus Science and Arts for Sustainability in Brussels. And finally, Mr. Harmen Spek, Innovation and Solution Lead at Plastic Soup Foundation. Thank you very much to those speakers. Please note that all the materials I mentioned again will be including PDF versions of speech presentations, the video recording of the sessions, and the reference material will be uploaded and available on the Sustainable Development web page. The link was provided on the chat box. You can still find it if you just do www.unosd.un.org. You'll find then the web page of the Sustainable Development Transformation Forum. I'd like to remind the speakers to please share more e-links to reference they may have about the topics we discussed today, as we will continue to update and populate the forum's webpage with this information. I'd like to also many thanks to all the participants who joined us for this session of this Sustainable Development Transformation Forum. And I would like to invite you to join us tomorrow again, the 3rd of March, for the last session, the 4th session, on Goal 15, Life on Land, also in the context of COVID-19 recovery and advancing the implementation of the 2030 agenda. I would like to convey our special thanks now to our longtime partner, the Asia-Europe Foundation, especially to Ms. Grazina Pulaska and Mr. Darren Swanson for their excellent work in moderating this session. And of course, to all the UNOSD staff and interns who are supporting the forum behind the scenes to make it a big success. And before I say goodbye, I need to tell you to please complete the evaluation form within 30 minutes. It's very simple, very quick, but it's very useful for us. And we will leave the slide with the e-link for the next 30 minutes in case you need to, run and then come back to do it. But please do it because it helps us to make it better and understand the work, like to assess the work we have done. And of course, I'd like again to say, please join us tomorrow. And thank you all. Have a good day, a good evening, or a good night, wherever you are. Now I say goodbye, but the web page will be open. Although I'm going and the other colleagues are going, you can connect to this web page to see the slido.com and SDTF 2022. You could take you could put your, as Darren showed you at the beginning, you could have your phone there and just you have a couple of questions we need to respond. Okay, I finish here. Good, thank you very much and see you tomorrow.